I'm proud and excited to announce that the new book, Transform Your Body, Transform Your Life, is now available. I've put the links to grab your copy from Amazon worldwide in the show notes, and I can't wait to see what you think. As a thank you for listening to the podcast, email podcast@rntfitness.com with your receipt, and we'll send you the free ebook version to start reading immediately. If you like a sneak peek of what's inside, you can download the first chapter at rntfitness.com/book. Also, you've heard me talking about the power of journaling for a long time, so I'm happy to announce we've now got customized RNT journals in store. There's a mix of prompts and freestyle writing, which you can take a glimpse of on rntfitness.com/journal. Just a quick one before we get into this episode. If you're in the UK and you use supplements, I'd highly recommend checking out Reflex Nutrition, where they're giving up to 40% on all their range if you use the code PTRNT at checkout. I've been using Reflex for nearly a decade, with their microwave being one of my favorite whey proteins. It's grass-fed, hormone-free, and digests so well compared to most on the market. Check out their full supplement range, including all your transformation basics and plant-based alternatives on reflexnutrition.com, and use the code PTRNT at checkout for up to 40% off. Today on RNT Fitness Radio, I'm joined by a special guest, Bilal Khan, who's come back on the show after first appearing on episode 113 to talk all about some of the events happening in the world today. The big question we tackle is, if Black lives seem to matter today, will they matter to organizations, people, and the government tomorrow? As a diversity and inclusion expert, he says his job shouldn't even exist in this world. Through the episode, we talk all about whether there's a solution, what the accountability needs to be, protesting during COVID, why he didn't post a black square, and how to start tackling the deep-rooted racism and stereotyping in society. This is an important conversation that I urge everyone to listen to right to the end, and then share it with someone who needs to hear it too. So without further ado, let's dive in. So I noticed that you didn't post on Blackout Tuesday. I didn't either myself, but should I have? And why didn't you?
Wow, that's a big question to start with straight off the bat. Personally, I'll start with why I didn't post, and I'll get on to whether or not you should have. I didn't post because I felt that it would be tokenistic. By that I mean, for me to just post a black square in a time when everyone else online is posting a black square seems like a gesture that doesn't mean anything. What the hashtag Black Lives Matter was supposed to do was actually give people who wanted to know information, be that information about the protest, be that information about like what they should be thinking about and saying. A lot of people on Blackout Tuesday were supposed to be using the hashtag Blackout Tuesday, but were instead using the hashtag Black Lives Matter, which we'll get on to, of course they do, and all of that stuff. But when there is one post in a sea of hundreds, I don't know about you, but I went on Instagram that day, and like it was just squares. There was just black squares everywhere, right? And I couldn't actually see anything. For people who were trying to look for actual information, unfortunately, I've heard from a lot of people that post actually erased that, especially when it was with the hashtag Black Lives Matter, because it meant you couldn't get access to protest. I think there's been, over the years, we've seen all of these social media campaigns, from the ice bucket challenge to like the no makeup selfies, all of that stuff. You can remember it. But what actually happened as a result of them? Maybe at the time, a small bit of awareness, and it was at the forefront of our minds. Long-term change, I'm going to suggest there was minimal or none. That's the reason I don't engage with things like that personally. The other question was, should you have done it? My question to you is, well, why didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, like we were talking about before we got on air, is I didn't, until I logged on to Instagram that day, I wasn't actually aware that this was happening, mainly because I wasn't following the news that closely at the time. But when I did see it, I thought, well, posting a black square, yes, it creates awareness, but ultimately, that posting a black square isn't really going to do anything. I think, yes, it creates awareness. It shows that you're showing support, but I didn't really feel like it was enough. And also, I wouldn't know what to say with it. Like, this was the other thing that we were talking about before, is that I didn't really know, or I still don't really know what to say on this topic.
Yeah.
And like for me, you're one of my best friends, and you're half black.
Yeah.
So that in itself is never like I'm not supportive of the movement or the awareness campaign, but I just didn't really know whether. Do you understand? Like, I can't even articulate the words here because I don't really know what to say.
Absolutely, and I think actually, what was funny is that so many people who actually I saw posting black squares were in a similar position. Who were like, I don't really know what to say, so I'm posting a black square, and it's like, well, if you don't know what to say, just probably best that you learn first before just posting a black square because you feel pressured into doing it, right? I think what you did is fine. Like to not know about an issue and therefore not speak on it is cool. But then to say I'm actually about this issue, but I'd rather understand is probably the starting point for everyone here. I think what unfortunately might have happened is a lot of people felt this is the way, this is the answer. If I post this, that's cool. That's not enough. I don't think a black square, as you said, does anything. Right? Like, really? What does it do? I remember back in the day when I was on BBM, I used to change my display picture to a black square when I was just pissed off. Or like, it doesn't, but that doesn't do anything. And for me, it doesn't show enough. A lot of the black square stuff is about solidarity. I get it. And it was about awareness. It worked. A lot of people's attention was brought to the matter as a result. However, if you're posting a black square without any actual follow-up work, I don't think that's enough.
Do you think it was just a trend? Do you think it was a fad for the day?
Yeah, it was.
Because you were seeing some like celebrities doing it and they were making sure it was looking aesthetic. Yeah. I've seen some people do it with making sure they had their branding on the bottom right. Does it just feel like
it felt
corporate?
That's what I mean. It felt like a gesture. Like we have to do it because that's what everyone's doing today.
Yeah.
But what the movement is about isn't about a black square. The movement is actually about people's lives mattering, right? People not being more like 9 times more likely to be arrested on the streets, stopped and searched on the streets of London. Like that's just one stat. It's not about we want people to care about us. That's amazing if people care, but if institutionally there is no actual change, these black squares mean nothing. A lot of people who posted them, I'm not into naming names and stuff, but I do question what really that meant to them if the next day your next post is then just like, I got my first Frappuccino because the stuff started opening up and I went to the coffee shop. Realistically, what would have been a good gesture is to follow that up with further work and prove that you're doing some actual
What's
research.
Further work mean to you?
Further work means to me interrogating how do I contribute to a system in which, unfortunately, black lives don't matter, right? How might I play a role in that system? What ideas, attitudes, beliefs might I hold? What might my family be saying that I just let slide because I'm there and I don't challenge it? What in my organisation do I laugh at or find just okay because that's just the way things are here? Those are the things that need to be challenged fundamentally. We start there. If we're not starting there, then we're not actually getting the job done. So a lot of people that started with the black square, amazing, but what are you doing next is my question.
And that brings me on to the question of like, right now, Black Lives Matter. Today, Black Lives Matter, it's, as bad as it sounds, it's trendy at the moment. But what will they matter tomorrow? Like, will they matter to organizations? Will they matter to people? Will they matter to everyone who posted it in the future? Like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, a year from now? What's the next step? Will they still matter?
It's interesting. So just to take a step back for a second before I get into that, there's so much tiredness and lethargy within the black community at the moment, which is unfortunate, right? Like my line of work as a diversity and inclusion sort of specialist and social justice activist and stuff, there are people that are normally about it and just out there and saying loads of stuff, who are right now really tired and are taking actually when you'd normally see them at the forefront are taking a bit of a step back. A lot of that comes from the tiredness of suddenly everyone else realizing that this is an issue, where this has been an issue for you your whole life and working life, and that's a cause that you're driven to act upon. If those people are tired, what they're tired about says to me that actually the rest of the world have suddenly realized that there's a point here, right? Which is something I've been so aware of my whole life, but everyone else suddenly realizes there's a point. When those people get tired, those people want you to step up and respond and do some learning and unlearning of like things that you've already sort of, what's the word I'm thinking about? Things that you've already sort of had at the forefront of your mind, unlearn some of those things and go back to the start again. So yeah, the question being, Black Lives Matter today, will they matter tomorrow? People are tired because they've seen beforehand that they don't, that this is trendy at the moment. When Trayvon Martin died in America, or Eric Garner, or you name it, we've seen protests and we've seen organizations have a small response, and the world have a small response at the time. People are tired because they've already seen this, what is currently happening, happen many, many times before, where it's a quick reaction, everyone posts something, everyone's aware for a little bit, but there's no actual fundamental change because the same issues crop up again, like every couple months, the same thing's back. If they matter tomorrow I'm going to talk about if they matter tomorrow, what that will look like. To organizations, what that will look like is doing some deep interrogative work about how might we be upholding a system that perpetuates the ideas that Black lives don't matter. What might we be? What does our board look like is a place to start. What does the C-suite look like? Who are the people in the top level positions? If they all look the same, there's probably an issue there, which says that Black lives don't matter, right? Because you would have them there. I hear from a lot of people that actually, but we just can't find the talent. That's a big issue that I hear said in a lot of my workshops. Right? We just can't find the people. But then that's your fault. If you can't find the people, the issue is on you not being able to find the people because the people exist for the roles, right? Again, if it matters now as a PR stunt, I don't believe that some organizations fundamentally want to challenge their existing viewpoint and where they already are. PR stunts are great because people go, okay, cool, like I'll still buy from them because they said something wicked. But if internally in the organization, there's still the idea that, well, this isn't important. We're not going to source our materials from these places. We're not going to get resources we're not going to get staff from these backgrounds. We're not going to have staff in certain positions from these backgrounds. If that's the way the organization looks, the fundamental message is that Black lives don't matter, right? The way that they'll matter tomorrow is if everyone, and I mean everyone from like the government through to like me and you, starts interrogating, what do I say without thinking? Like what just comes off naturally off the tongue? What do I just think about naturally? We all live in an environment where we consume mostly a white media. Like you look at, I think it's something like 95% of the media, top level, like people who own the media in this country are white men, actually. We mostly consume that. Therefore, we're seeing things from a certain lens. Children in school are reading books mostly written by white authors with white-centered characters. I was thinking about the other day, even Harry Potter, like how many black or non-white characters? It's a fantasy world. Like she created an entire world, which is fake, like about, dragons and wizards. But there's like 2 Patil sisters and
Patel, right?
And like one black guy who was the guy in the film who was announcing the stuff at Quidditch, even in that, you've got very few people who are not white represented even in literature that we consume. And we're all part of consuming this.
And even if you look at like, I was just thinking about, because he's a fancy one, I was thinking of like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. Yeah. If you look at Lord of the Rings, the good side are white. And the bad, orcs and the things, and the Mordor, everyone's black. Yeah. And I think these sorts of potentially unintentional, but at the same time, it seeps into your subconscious.
And if we're constantly, all of us, consuming that narrative. Therefore, we just start to enact that in the way that we live, because from a small child seeing those images, reading those books, that's what you're seeing. Okay, so certain people are in certain positions, certain people aren't. We all have a role to challenge that, I believe. Be that from, if you're an MP out there listening, well, you're doing well if you've got MPs listening. But if whoever you are in society, we all have a role to challenge our own ideas, and where might we have got that from?
Here's one for you. Not in the UK, but how much of a difference do you think Barack Obama being president made?
To what?
Yeah,
to the world.
Yeah, to this, or to. Do you think it changed anything?
Representation at any level is good, right? Like, it's always nice to know that one day I can grow up to be X because I can see someone that looks like me there. I do believe that at that period, there was a huge sort of around the world, I think, So
I remember you were happy that when
everyone was happy, because he's Kenyan and he's hot. Everyone around the world was like, there's a black guy in the White House, right? And to this day, I think a lot of people still look at that as like this moment in history that signified perhaps a change in what you can achieve and what you can be. However, if representation is then followed by what we now have, really
complete opposite.
Yeah, it's complete opposite. And you've seen that if you look in like American history over the years, every time there's been some sort of progress in politics, there's been the absolute opposite as the next person in power, which is interesting in that country. But you start thinking about, well, what does it really do? If I can have this belief that I can be president, but then 4 years later see what we now have as presidency, it changes the landscape completely and starts to make you, but it just raises the actual awareness of how far right people might be, as much as, I believe I can achieve, cool, but can I in a climate where actually a lot of people are still in opposition to that, is the question.
If you think about, I came into your house, you were playing Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting story behind that whole album, because a lot of it was about, they were talking a lot about white supremacy, the police and all the stereotypes that they faced. And that's just another example of a movement that created a lot of attention around black people. But I don't know if it really did anything in the future. And yesterday I was watching Ali. I don't know if you've seen the film by Will Smith.
I haven't.
It's really, I'd never heard of it.
I actually didn't know that was a film.
There's a film called Ali, written, played by Will Smith. And obviously Ali was at the time where Malcolm X was speaking, and Martin Luther King. And there's been a lot of times over history, in the last 50 years, 100 years, that black people had a massive platform and a moment to make a difference. But the same problem is still happening.
Yeah.
Yes, it's got better than it was 60 years ago, when in the 60s, but it's still there. Like, what is the solution to this? Is there a solution?
Whoa, that's a big question. Progress is always made incrementally, right? I do believe that fundamentally in our society, we always progress at small rates, We look at these moments as there was an actual shift, be that in a shift in like belief from other black people in the community, be that a shift in, okay, fine, it is okay to be on TV or have that platform or be a boxer or be the world's greatest or be this or be that. I reckon that right now, this current trend might also be seen as one of those moments in the future for people to look back on. However, do those moments transcend to actually systematic change? No, we haven't seen systematic change. People are still fighting within what is essentially a capitalist, white supremacist, patriarchal society. For things to actually shift, we might need to redesign an actual society. I've seen a lot of people sort of say, let's abolish the police. Okay, cool, get rid of the police if you want, but realistically, the rest of the world will still look the same. Like, nothing will shift as a result of that, because it's still the same society with the same views, same ideas. I'm going to get into a little bit of sociology, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Right? there are three ways in which oppression there's four, but I don't believe in a fourth. You can challenge me on that later. There are three ways that I see oppression as being perpetuated in the world. The first one is the ideological, right? The idea exists that someone's better than someone else, right? Men are better than women, white people are better than black people, straight people are better than gay people, whatever. Those ideas get perpetuated, because they're upheld, as this is just the common narrative. The second way is, those ideas then get embedded in the institutions, that they get embedded in law. If we look at racism throughout history, that's actually, particularly in America, but also in other contexts around the world, it's been embedded in law that certain people own the land and other people don't have rights to that land. For example, if you look at the history of slavery in America, white slave owners had the property that, like, the black people seen as property, not as human, but as property, and that was their property, and that was embedded in law. So then things get embedded in institutions through that, be that education, medicine, law, whatever. The last one, which is the most important one for all of us, is the interpersonal way in which oppression perpetuates. Interpersonal being, that idea that I see in the law and in the education and whatever is now what I enact in terms of microaggression or violence towards someone else, because I now have just been part of this where I now believe that to be true. For there to be a shift, we need to challenge all three of those, right? But we need to get to the root. And if the root is the idea, is that someone is better than someone else, we need to fundamentally shift that. But then we need to start challenging what that looks like in our systems. What that looks like currently is there's a whole movement around decolonizing the education system, decolonizing law, trying to remove those ideas which are embedded at the heart of what it is, so that the next generation of people growing up just won't live in a society where those are the ideas that are thrown around, so they won't enact that same violence.
So it's definitely something that it needs a generational fix as opposed to a tomorrow fix. If you compare like the 60s compared to now, it's a big fundamental shift. You're not having blacks on one side of the bus and whites on the other side. This is more America, which doesn't happen now. So are you suggesting that this is going to be like a 20 to 30, 40, 50 year sort of solution? That requires a change in the school systems, the Harry Potters, all of that exposure you get when you're forming your belief systems when you're growing up?
Yeah, I hate the idea that it needs to take like a generation to do something, because I think what that can lead to is apathy from this generation to go, it's not my problem to fix. And if we have that belief, it will take the next generation. If every single generation says that, the fuck's going to happen? Like, nothing will happen, right? However, I do think that these things take time. Unfortunately, challenging these systems doesn't seem to be everyone's cup of tea. Really. Like, not everyone's invested in challenging it. Because if you're benefiting from a system, which means that you are not at the receiving end of something horrible, why would you bother to challenge it? Right? Which is why these things have existed for so long. Which is why inequity in the world has existed, because some people are fundamentally benefiting mostly the people in charge. And if the people in charge are benefiting, you're an owner of a business, why would you shift why would you shift the model that's working for you?
How does it affect you?
What?
All of this that you're talking about?
Wow. The thing is, we talk about this moment as like, this moment's heavy this is a big moment. But for most people invested in the moment, it's been a whole lifetime. It's not a moment. Like, this is something that everyone else has suddenly realized is important or at the forefront of people's minds. And realistically, it's affected me in terms of I'm suddenly getting work. I've not been doing my normal job since COVID happened, to be honest. And now everyone's interested in having me come and speak and come and do this and come and do that. So it's actually given me an income, which is interesting. But it's also affected me in that there's like a weird sort of mental thing going on where it's like, why did it take someone, what this came from was the death of George Floyd. Why did it take someone being unlawfully murdered by the police for the world to wake up, but also for me to earn money.
Yeah.
And I fundamentally don't think that should need to be the case.
Should your job even exist?
No. In a just world, I wouldn't have a job in this field, right? I wouldn't be doing diversity inclusion, because we would have inclusion. That would be at the heart of everything that we do. We'd exist from that being the way up.
Yeah.
My job only exists because of the fact that we aren't at that place yet.
So if you look at an organization, what do you classify as inclusive?
Inclusive to me looks like from the board all the way down. A lot of people are very good at diversity, as in getting people through the doors. You know, like there probably are a lot of people from minoritized backgrounds in most organizations. But in what positions are those people? Are those people the cleaners, the security guards, the receptionists? Are those people the junior members of staff? Or are they the people sitting in the top floor making the decisions, right? Inclusion looks like that, embedded throughout. It also looks like people not being afraid to challenge things that they feel are uncomfortable. I had a conversation with someone this week who said to me, I wasn't sure, like basically they're a black person who's been mentally drained by the world in this current period and didn't feel that they could take the time off work because they didn't know how to articulate to work that actually this feeling of racism that they felt their whole life has now just become too much and they just need some time off to just recover, right? But they didn't know how to articulate that to work. Inclusion to me looks like having spaces where we're actually able to have those conversations with our managers and with our HR teams and with everyone, because it's not awkward. We're just aware and we're willing to address those things that might affect people on the day-to-day. It means shifting things for everyone to make a system that works for everyone. People go, there's one thing for you, one thing for you, one thing for you. Actually, if we built truly inclusive organizations, it wouldn't be about, we need a solution for women, we need a solution for black people, we need a solution for like gay people. Actually, we've just got a solution where everyone here is all right and it works for each person. There's a lot of things that need to be done for organizations to interrogate that, but that's my job. So,
yeah. So all this awareness has been created. You know, you proposed a lot of potential actions that could happen in the next coming weeks, months, years. What's the accountability around all of this? Like, who's going to hold people accountable?
Yeah. What? Like, as in, who should be holding?
Who should be people holding people accountable? What should people be held accountable to? What are the accountability measures overall?
Yeah. What's interesting, right, is that, I don't know about you, but I've seen so many organizations post stuff. Like you said, you didn't post anything, right? But I've seen so many people post something like, this matters to us, blah, blah, blah. What I haven't seen, and challenging on this from anyone, is this is what we're going to do by this date. Not one organization has said that, as far as I'm aware. No one said we're going to have, we're going to diversify our board. We're going to have X internship programs. We're going to do this. No one has seen that. I've seen a lot of people just say this is important. Accountability looks like actually going, by what date and time am I going to do this? Now, often the organizations I work with will say, but yeah, we have other priorities. We have all businesses have the priority of making money. That's the point of a business. But there are other priorities. If those other priorities become more important than actually doing inclusion, then very quickly inclusion can fall at the wayside and be totally deprioritized.
Because there's no tangible ROI.
No.
Right?
Yeah. But if you're looking long term and you start going, well, what is my ROI on this? Why am I doing this? Like, is this something I fundamentally believe in? You're in your book, you talk about, you need to ask why. You need to keep saying, what is the reason that I'm even investing in this fitness program?
Yeah. If
businesses took the same measure or the same steps with doing inclusion, why is it important to you? I think is a really fundamental place to start. If it's important to you because it's an in thing, it's not important to you. If it's important to you because it's at the heart of everything that you're about, and there's a reason that you actually want to do this, probably a bit more important. Accountability phases look like in organizations publicly saying what we're going to do by when. Accountability for the individual looks like like I said before, sort of questioning where's that idea or that attitude, that assumption come from. It even goes, will I be consuming media by non-white authors?
Oh, wow, okay.
A little bit more. Will it be going, what am I used to reading? Who am I used to speaking to? What podcasts am I used to listening to? Like which voices are in my head most of the time, right? Diversifying that is an individual sort of thing. One thing is just checking in with people a little bit more. Like I heard, this is another anecdote from a friend. She's a black lawyer, and she said to me, she's in mostly a white circle of friends and employment, and she said to me, it was interesting because she's in a WhatsApp group with everyone, mostly white women, who were all posting squares and saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But not one person just said, how are you? Are you all right? And that was eye-opening to her, that as much as people might be publicly doing things, what are you actually doing in the circles that you exist in? Who do you know that you can even just ask, are you okay? Not ask to sort of like ask them to give you some extra energy, but just to check in and see if you're all right. And if people can set themselves the same sort of goals and targets around what they'd normally do, like, I don't know, this is a fitness podcast, people are probably thinking about their calorie intake, right? You can set yourself goals around that. You can set yourself goals around, well, who am I going to reach out to? Who in my organization am I going to challenge? What am I going to raise at the next meeting? It might be uncomfortable for you to raise some sort of conversations, but so is, I know the RNT journey is uncomfortable as fuck at the start, right? So I know that that's an uncomfortable process. So having those conversations, setting that as an accountability measure, who am I going to speak to, by what date, at what time? Small steps, but massive in terms of shifting that institutional level that I was talking about.
Do you think the micro can affect the macro here?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said before, right, we're all in this system where these ideas have been embedded and now we just enact them. But there's a diagram by this guy, I can't remember his name, it's Alan Johnson or something. And he essentially talks about how the system's reinforced by individuals, right? The system being work or the government or whatever. And if no one's challenging that system and no one's speaking out and no one's saying anything, it just continues. And the micro is enacted within that system from day to day. Like the small microaggressions from where you really from, or, like, oh, I know another brown person, or whatever people say at work, right? When those go unchallenged, and often, particularly if you're from a minoritized ethnic background, the comfort mechanism there is to prioritize the other person's comfort. So you might laugh about it. You might just go, oh, you might make light of it because it's an awkward situation when those things happen. However, to challenge those things, as much as it's uncomfortable, maybe personally or whatever, begins to raise that awareness that this is not okay, right? That these things, these ideas that from the ideological are not okay. And actually we're going to begin to start shifting that on a micro level. Slowly as those micro levels start shifting, we can then go up and begin to shift the macro. But like I said before, this is like hundreds of years of legislation and stuff. So people in those positions need to be the ones also being challenged on that.
Do you think there's an accountability measure for the government or the people who write these legislations? Is there an accountability there? Do you think they're going to take any action on this?
Well, do I think they will take action? Probably not. Do I think they should take action? Absolutely. But again, like I've seen a lot of change.org petitions and stuff and other petitions going around lately, which I really recommend that actually that's one action for everyone to take, just find some petitions to sign, because once they reach 100,000, particularly the government ones, they have to be talked about in the House of Commons. Those things, however, in a democracy, do come from the people. And if the people aren't raising them as issues, the government ain't going to talk about them, right? You might have individual MPs who are just really passionate, but the small minority of MPs in this country are really passionate, and the rest of the MPs just, get away with whatever's going on. It does take the average everyday person raising that. One thing that we can all do is write to RNP. We can all write to our local councillors as well and just say, hey, this is important. What I would like you to do, one first step, is if we can raise it that, for example, the curriculum is very white in the school system. We're mostly consuming white authors. We're mostly learning from a British history where somehow Britain was the saviour of the whole world when we know that historically to be inaccurate. Just start challenging those things and writing and asking for that to be done.
Do you think, here's another one that's come off the back of Black Lives Matter, is All Lives Matter? What are your thoughts on that? Because I've seen that spawn out of this. Yeah. Where people are saying, well, it's not just Black lives, it's all lives.
Yeah, at the time of recording, I don't know if anyone saw the protest that happened yesterday. It was called a counter-protest. Now, how can you counter a protest that wasn't no longer happening? The Black Lives Matter protest was cancelled yesterday in central London.
Oh, was it? Okay.
It was cancelled. And a bunch of just white lads rolled up to Central, man, and were throwing cans of Stella and all sorts at the police, which is mad because I thought they were there to be on the side of the police, but they were attacking the police. They said they all came down to protect statues. No one gives a fuck about inanimate objects, to be totally honest. Those people rocked up with All Lives Matter banners, right? Now, all lives can't matter if Black lives don't matter, which is the point here. The point is of the Black Lives Matter movement that currently in the world, Black lives do not matter because Black people are being killed at an exponential rate far higher than any other ethnic group, particularly by government officials or civil service or public service, whatever you want to call the police, right? In whatever country you're in. That is happening worldwide. That is a phenomenon. All lives do matter. Of course they matter. But the fundamental issue here is that the world doesn't see Black lives as mattering. You know? So these All Lives Matter people normally turn up going, well, all lives matter. Nobody's telling you that they don't. Like, absolutely no one has said that. People are saying that currently what we're focused on is the lives that don't matter. So let's give that some spotlight and let's work on that issue first. Let's look at that. And you know, I do understand that perspective, which is often from a working class white perspective, particularly in the north of this country, being the UK, where there is a lot of inequality, and they are actually they're having horrific times, right? Because they are poor, right? They don't have much money or access to wealth, or education is lower, and all of that stuff. I get that you might feel that there is no such thing as white privilege if that's the world in which you exist, because you don't feel like you're getting much out of the system or much out of the life. However, white privilege isn't about getting loads of stuff. It's about not getting stuff, right? Mm. So Black people have a totally different experience to white people, where Black people are being killed and dying and having racism and all that stuff, where white people aren't getting that. The privilege isn't in getting like a gift. There's no, you don't get a gift for being white, right? But you don't get the experience of racism. You don't get that. Mm. And that is in itself the privilege. To move forward beyond the All Lives Matter thing, what we need to start doing is focusing on the lives that don't matter. Within the world, trans lives don't matter, Black lives don't matter, gay lives don't matter, disabled lives don't matter. You go on and on and on, because that is a narrative that is upheld, because that's the ideological.
How have you experienced this personally over the years? What's been some of your most memorable experiences? Memorable for the wrong reasons, but experiences where you felt like you haven't mattered? Yeah, I'm
not going to talk about this because it is hard for me, but twice I've been assaulted by police and it wasn't nice. Whilst I was at uni, so I went to Cambridge, which was mad I went there, man. But I was there, and whilst I was there, I always felt othered just by the process of just existing in that institution. One small example is to get from A to B, you'd have to walk through one college. Every single day I'd walk through the same college for 3 years. Every single day I was stopped and asked for my student ID, whilst loads of white students would just walk past. funny story is one day, not funny, one day my friends from home came up to visit me. One of them, being a white girl, doesn't even go to that uni. She was let through the door of that college. I wasn't, and I actually go to the university. So, small things where you constantly feel that sense of you don't belong, you are different, you are othered. I've experienced that stuff so much throughout my life, but I think all of that has led me to the position that I'm now in to speak on this work and do this work, Like, one thing that was really funny is I had a hand up one time when I was on a panel about inclusion, from a white guy who goes, "What credibility do you have to speak on this subject?" And I said, "A lifetime of experience that you probably don't have." And I think even in his tone of voice and the questioning for that was, I feel like I should be, I feel like someone else should be talking, because someone else who's got a master's or got a thing, you don't need that when it's been your whole life.
Do you feel tired now, or do you feel activated? Are you full on activist mode right now, or do you understand what I mean? Are you thinking this is an opportunity to almost use it as an opportunity to really say
never mind.
To really sort of spread the message out there?
Yeah.
Or are you seeing it as this is another movement, it's going to pass? Like, do you want this to be your chance to really make a mark here in history?
Absolutely. This is the time. No, the only reason I do this work is because I fundamentally believe that you can shift stuff. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think that things could be different. Right now is a moment where I totally get all my friends and people out there who are too tired to do the work, because it is tiring. But I'm capitalizing on this moment because I fundamentally believe if you have a captive audience, the world's a captive audience right now, everyone's interested, everyone's emailing me, get those people whilst it's hot, whilst it's still at the forefront of their mind. My whole point here is to shift perspectives and have these conversations and challenge assumptions. If people are at that point in their life where they're ready to do that for themselves, I'm ready to engage in that personally.
I mean, you've had it from a multitude of directions as well. I mean, you're half black, but you're mixed race in the not traditional sense. You've got, if someone asks me, like, where's Bilal from? I'm like, he's from everywhere. But also, your name's Bilal.
Yeah.
Your surname's Khan, and you get it from that as well.
Yeah.
So you're getting it from multiple directions.
It's funny because I'm not even Muslim, and I experience a lot of Islamophobia, which is jokes, because of my name and in the airports, and anyone who's Muslim understands, and anyone who looks Muslim, you just get that sort of experience of the world. I've got that from within the Asian community. I've got that from within the black. I've got like a lot of weird sort of coming from everywhere angles, because when you are mixed, whatever you're mixed with, like the world is based on like this binary system in general, where you're one or the other. And when you're neither or both, it does, or you're loads, it does, affect the way that people are just used to categorizing and boxing what you must be. So therefore you do get weird experiences from all angles.
So how do we start to tackle that? Because a lot of that is deep-rooted racism in our cultures. And there's various stereotypes and labels that are given to us as we grow up, and these form part of your belief systems that you latch onto later on in life, that pretty much everything that you've experienced has been indoctrinated into other people from an early age.
Yeah.
Like, don't go near that person, or that person's a this, or whatever it could be.
Yeah.
What's the because there's a lot there, and a lot of it's related to elder generations, and it's deep rooted within a lot of us.
Yeah.
I think there's, you talked a lot about white supremacy being an issue, but I think racism is present in many communities, and I'll open-handedly say that in the Asian community, I think Asians are amongst the most racist people out there.
Yeah.
And I've seen Asians be racist towards all different colours.
Yeah. It's so, I think that when you start getting into sort of the internalized racism, or the sort of the racism that exists and the prejudice that exists within other minoritized ethnic groups in this country, it's so interesting how that plays out, right? A lot of that does stem from a root of British colonialism. Like a lot of those ideas come from there. Like you said, it's so embedded, right? Like how do we shift that? You've got a lot of parents on this that listen to this.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of things come from very young. One of the things, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a parent the other day, and he was saying, I realised when I told my kid to go cross the road that I was actually remembering exactly what happened with me when I was a child that someone told me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that's so powerful. Just even in that small, tiny moment, to just think, why am I saying this to my kid, right? Where did that come from? And one of the things I ask people to do is to really consider what are you saying to children, because that stuff will stick and that stuff will form sort of long-lasting memories, particularly for children around race and who you should and shouldn't be friends with, or who you shouldn't play with, or where you shouldn't go, all that stuff. Like you said, we all are part of having consumed some of those ideas being taught to us, so they're so innate and embedded in us that sometimes we think it's natural, but it's not natural. We've all been socialized to enact that and be that way. I would question at all times, whenever you hold that thought about someone, or you're about to say, but that person's, why do you think that? Why? And just hold that. Sometimes we don't have the answers, like one of the most uncomfortable moments for me is even being, my mum reminds me of this, is as a young boy, I said to my mum, who's black, but black people smell. And I was about 5. And my mum reminds me of this. Now, where did I get that from? Because I have a black mum. Right? I got that from school, actually, because my mum said, who said that? I said, Dylan, this boy at school said that, right? Which is interesting, because that stuff if someone says it to you and you're a little kid, you go, okay, cool, that's how it is. That's just the world now, that's how it is. Really question what your children are saying, or what you're saying to your children, I think is a great place to start. The other place, and it goes back to what I was saying before about what literature and what media we're consuming. There is a lot of children's literature and media out there which is non-white. By that I mean like Asian or black or indigenous or whoever. Often those pieces of literature are consumed only by the people who are from those communities. So a little children's book that has a black girl as an astronaut might only be bought by black families, right? An Asian family is not going to buy that book because it's not relevant to my child. But why is a white wizard relevant to your child? Think about what images we're showing our kids, because those images mean, anyone can be anything. It doesn't matter who you are. Like as a little kid, I can read this. I can go, okay, cool. That black girl in my school might be the astronaut, or that Asian kid in my school might be white. That's how we begin to shift beyond this, what's embedded, because some things we think are unshiftable, but if we challenge them and think, where's that coming from, and start to interrogate that, particularly in what we're then enacting on the next generation.
So parents have a strong responsibility here.
I really think so. And it's not all on the parents, of course. There's a big, massive role on, like I said, like the school system to reinforce that stuff. And actually for parents who might be on the, what's it called, the PTA, with parent, teacher, governors board or whatever, to question what are the books that my kids are reading? What are the things that are being taught and shown, so that all kids, white kids, brown kids, like whoever, are reading and seeing images of other people that aren't them in positions of power or success.
I had a really interesting conversation the other day with a friend of mine who said, we were talking about the concept of, crossing the road if you see a certain type of group, right? And I asked her, why do you do it? Why do you cross the road? And she said, it's because, they bring it on themselves because of how some of them act. So that crosses the board. Do you understand what I mean here? Like if one group that of whatever ethnicity that may be have done something provocative to this person, that associate it with everyone, and then she's like, well, they don't help the other people by creating this reputation.
You said it in yourself.
What do you think about that? Yeah,
like I haven't met all Polish people. I haven't, but I've seen a lot of Polish guys drinking cans in the alleyway. Right, that is true. Both of those things are true. I haven't met all Polish people. I've seen some Polish people. It'd be very easy for me to make the assumption that all Polish guys are drinking in the alleyway.
Yeah.
However, those are the ones that are visible to me, that are made hyper visible, because that's what I've now associated in my head is what is true. The reason I'm not seeing other people is because I'm not going out of my way to figure out what are the rest of the community and everyone else doing, right? I would guess that 99% of Polish people are not drinking in alleyways in London. Like that's probably the correct assumption, right? If we could all do that, if we could all challenge, well, I've seen this, so therefore my association is all of those people are like that, we'd all be in a better place. You know, my parents are the worst for it because my dad will say all kinds of problematic things about everyone, and you're like, it's just awkward, right? So like, you shouldn't be saying that. If we could all have that, you know, and it just challenge. Why have I associated one small experience that I personally had with a few times with some people with everyone else? Have I actually gone out of my way to figure out who else from that country or from that community is doing something totally different? I probably haven't, because I've now just made that image, which, I'm not going to bother because they're not important to me.
Yeah. And another thing I was thinking about just now, when you talk about media, and you're talking about what type of media you consume, a lot of musicians, especially in like hip hop, rap, R&B, are of black descent. Okay? And I think people of all races and nationalities listen to that.
Yeah.
And one word they use a lot is the N-word in music. I'm not going to say it because... But what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts? Do you think that perpetuates it? Because I think of that and I think of the reason why it was created is around slavery, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's one of those, everyone will have a different perspective. So I'm not going to be the voice for everyone here. You might be listening and feel like you don't agree with me at all. That's cool. There are words throughout history which are reclaimed by communities to sort of then give them a sense of power. One other example of that is a word queer within the LGBT community, which was originally just a slur, but has been reclaimed to mean something else, right? It's like an identity that you can be proud of holding. The N-word, again, is another example of a word which some people find really comfortable to reclaim and use in like a familial sort of setting. Personally, I don't use that because I don't think, even as a mixed race person, or I just find it uncomfortable. And I also think it is just a stark reminder of the legacy of slavery, as you said. However, for some people to take away the one weapon that was thrown at you and then make that your own is something powerful. Some people, that's where it came from, right? Some people thought, if we could take that away from you, we've disarmed you, we've taken a gun off, taken a clip off your gun, I've got it now, what are you going to do? What are you going to throw at me next? Which is why some people have it. Whether other people should be throwing it around, again, debatable. People might debate it. Personally, I'm on the side of saying absolutely not. If you know that it's a word rooted in slavery, even if you're quoting Jay-Z and you're singing Kanye or whatever you're singing, man, just try and avoid that word. You know, it's not that hard to just not say a certain word. You know, and I'm like, I don't even know most of the words that there are. Like, why are we so concerned with saying one that we do know exists when I don't know most of them? So.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting, because I think that people understand the reason for using the word, and then it can often be a mixed signal.
Yeah. And
that's interesting. I've never heard you say it, so I wanted to know your thoughts.
Yeah. No, I mean, I wouldn't say it. I don't think you'd catch me saying it.
And so look, we've talked about protests. You got protests with Black Lives Matter and all the various things, but at the same time of recording, we're also in supposed lockdown. And
welcome to my house, by the way.
Following good rules here.
2 meters apart.
And the whole concept of protesting during a pandemic, is it justified?
Yes. I think people wouldn't be protesting if they didn't feel like they should be. you know? I don't think anyone ever goes, I'd like to go to a protest. Like, nobody wakes up feeling that that's something that they want to do. It's more a sudden urge of, I need to do this.
All right, here's a controversial question. Do you think people went because of everything that's been going on, rather they just wanted to get out? And because I feel like I've seen a lot of people go, and I'm thinking, I've never heard you talk anything about.
Yeah, at the same time, I feel that the reason that this movement has got so much momentum is actually because you've got a whole world that is captive in their own house with nothing else to do. So suddenly an issue that's been happening for decades is now the only thing at the forefront of your mind. Therefore, I'm invested, I'm involved. That, for some people, might have dragged them out of their house to go, cool, I've now got a reason to go. I do feel that might have been the case for some people. However, does that delegitimize a movement? Absolutely not. If more people are learning about something and therefore investing in what it means, amazing. Let's keep that energy moving forward. What I think is that, having gone to a protest myself, I went because I needed to know that the energy I was seeing online and the things I was seeing posted would be validated by actual numbers of people in real life. I've been going to protests for years. This for me was a matter of urgency, not a matter of I can wait until COVID dies down. You know, I think people make their own choices, particularly as we know. I think in this country, it's Bangladeshi, South Asian, and Black people are more likely to die from COVID-19 in the UK than any other race. You can talk about institutional racism all you like and all of that stuff. But however, if people are aware that me going to a protest has probably heightened my likelihood of getting ill and dying, no one in their right mind would choose to go unless they fundamentally felt that they needed to be there, is what I would propose, right? You can argue that. I just don't think that people would protest in a pandemic unless they felt it was necessary.
So your answer to it is that it doesn't matter the cost of the pandemic potentially because this is a greater, deeper cause that's claimed the lives of a lot more people.
Yeah, like one of the best posters I saw at the protest was "Racism is a pandemic too," and it really stopped me and made me think, because racism globally has claimed millions of lives in the last hundreds of years. However, we don't challenge racism. We don't lock everyone in their house because people are being racist. You don't stop the shops from opening because people might be racist in the shop. You don't stop people from traveling because people might be racist somewhere else. But we've treated coronavirus with that level where the whole world shut down, right? Racism has systematically killed much more people on a global scale. We haven't treated it with the same medicine that we would treat corona.
What are your plans to do? What are your plans next?
Book me. I'm trying to work a lot more, so I'm doing virtual workshops, which is so different to what I'm used to doing. Like, a lot of my work relies on me being in the room and holding a space. But I've started creating virtual workshops to challenge institutions. I'm really hoping I can write a few of my ideas down and create something a little bit more. What's the word? Formalized, and also just like something I want to offer the world. I'm thinking of writing a little book at the moment, just about what any of this means and how this can play out for the individual.
If there are people listening right now, what's one thing they can do to take awareness into action and put some accountability behind it?
I think I've given a couple tips in this podcast already. Firstly, start with yourself, right? Don't start with going and throwing stuff at everyone else. Just think about you, man. And I know that Akash really recommends journaling. Maybe journal about this. What are your assumptions? What do you need to challenge here? What core beliefs might be within you, and embedded was the word that you used, that you might need to shift, right? Start there. I'd then say, like I've talked a lot about media that you're consuming, diversify your media sources. Which podcasts are you listening to? You're obviously listening to this one. Which other ones are you listening to? What books are you reading? What films are you reading? Who's wrote them? Just changing that narrative a little bit, just so you're getting a little bit more sort of income from everywhere.
Sorry to interrupt, but the interesting thing about authors. I'm trying to think right now, black authors. I don't know many. Mainstream.
Yeah.
Do you have people you could recommend?
Absolutely. 2 books to start you off with is Akala's book Natives. Fantastic book.
Akala, the rapper?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's up there. Sick book.
Okay.
Akala's book Natives is absolutely brilliant. Like, it's a great place to start if you're trying to like just learn things from not an academic perspective. He talks in like a very conversational tone. Second book I'd recommend, a little bit more academic because she's quite posh. Afua Hirsch has written a book called British, which is again looking at what it means to be non-white and British, and she's a mixed race author. 2 books to get you started, but also just look up other books for yourself to read.
Brilliant. And your podcast?
Yeah, Over the Bridge podcast. It's me and 3 guys. We all went uni together at Cambridge. 2 black guys, 2 mixed race guys, me being one of them, where we just talk about identity, race and experiences, and also have on interesting guests similar to Akash to just talk about their own thing.
Amazing. So if you're someone who's interested in getting Bilal to come into your organisation, he's definitely the man to speak to here.
Yeah.
If you're working for a corporate, I mean, I know a lot of people here are working for corporates.
Yeah.
They mean that corporate environment, and they probably relate to a lot of things you said about the board, the C-suite, the people in higher positions, and it's probably predominantly white.
Yeah. And look, let me just say, it can feel overwhelming to be like, I don't know if I can challenge that, man. That's a lot. That's a big deal. However, a lot of people, particularly right now, their ears are open to just having that conversation. The reason that change doesn't happen is because everyone feels apathetic to the overwhelmingness of the issue. I get that. But it does begin with just asking, what are we doing about this? Even sending an email to your HR manager, hey, what's our plans for diversity and inclusion moving forward? Is a
even better.
question.
I know someone who can come and do it for us.
Yeah, and get me in. I'm happy to do it.
Amazing. Any parting words?
No, really. All I want to say is thank you, Akash, for having me on. It's nice to talk about stuff that we don't normally talk about. So, yeah.
Brilliant. No, thanks for coming on and sharing your wise words on this topic.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for being here today on this episode of RNT Fitness Radio. I'd love for you to do a quick little favor for us. Please head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating, leave a comment, and share it with your family and friends. If you're interested in learning more about how to transform your body and positively change your life, go to www.rntfitness.com and explore all our free content on offer. Thank you.